Anyone who knows me knows my love of the series The Golden Girls, but what they don't know is that I have a specific favorite episode. It's called Sick and Tired, and it comes in two parts. Dorothy's Bornak, as played by Bea Arthur, goes through this period of time where she has a mysterious illness, and she goes from doctor to doctor in Miami, and they can find nothing wrong with her. Finally, after months of just thinking that maybe she's just going crazy, and that's all there is to it, she sees this doctor and is diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. He tells her what to do to eliminate some of the manifestations of her illness. He tells her to eat right, he tells her to exercise, and then he says, and I quote, "Eliminate stress if you can." I was about 14 when I saw that episode, and I laughed out loud, as I continue to every time I see it, because it's impossible to eliminate stress if you can. Stress exists. We live in the world. But there are things we can do to manage our stress levels, and I'm here to tell you what those things are. Because I'm Linda, this is Linda's World, and this is the final episode of Self-Care Sundays. More on that later, because my tips about managing your stress start right now. It would be a really silly thing to assume that we could eliminate stressors in our lives. Stress is inevitable. From the moment we wake up in the morning and open our eyes, we are confronted with various different stressors in our lives at all different ages. Some people are subject to more stress than others, of course, and people have different sets of stressors, and 2020 has brought forth a plethora of new stressors for us, unfortunately. Stressors that led me to buy this shirt that says unwell because 2020. But that doesn't mean that we can't manage the way we feel about the experiences in our lives, even if we can't eliminate those very experiences. Now, there are three specific things that I like to do when I find myself a little bit stressed out or a lot bit stressed out, and I'd like to share those with you this evening. But before I do, I would like to say that if you're just a casual viewer of Linda's World and you haven't quite made that commitment to hitting subscribe, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button down below this video, and you too could be a member of Linda's World. And if it's your first time here and you've never seen a Linda's World video before, well, I suggest you do the same. Now, folks, while you're there subscribing, don't forget to hit the notification bell as well, so you can tell when new videos drop to my channel, and you can experience what it is we're experiencing here, even if Self-Care Sundays is going away. I'm not, and there's plenty of things that are to come in the months of October specifically, November and December, that are rather festive, and of course, all the rest of the programming we seem to enjoy here in Linda's World. Now let's talk about stress. So, like I said, you can't eliminate things that are stressing you out, because if you did that, I think the only way to do that is to wrap yourself in a plastic bubble and go hide in the closet. And if you want to go out and earn a living, you kind of can't do that. So what do? Well, as I said earlier, there are three specific things I like to do, and I like to call them the 3 R's of relieving stress. Okay, so all three begin with R. There are 3 specific things that you want to do at different times in your life. Now, I make this disclaimer before I suggest that. There are 3 things specifically that are each to their own. So you can only do one of these things at a time. And it is up to you, the viewer, the person with the stress, to figure out when is the appropriate time to do one of these 3 things. Okay? Now, I said they all begin with R, and I'd like to start with the first one. The first one is called retreat. So when you retreat from stress, this is an activity you want to save for times when you just can't handle it. Times when the stress is getting you really, really down and you feel like you can't continue another step. Times when you feel like you're going to cave. Times when you just cannot continue doing your daily life and you have to take a step back. So you retreat. And I suggest that you retreat into something that completely has nothing to do with what's stressing you out. Me personally, I choose TV and music. Those are my retreats. I watch TV sitcoms a whole lot, and I watch TV sitcoms specific to the times in my life when these things were not happening. Remember the Ariana Grande lyric that I always suggest in Breathin'? You remind me of a time when things weren't so complicated. Well, that's what I do. I specifically put on TV shows that existed in a world before I had this specific set of stressors, okay? For me personally, it's TV sitcoms, because those back in the day when I was a kid, well, I had stress when I was a kid too, but they suggest a simpler time, and they suggest a time when I didn't have to worry about these things. And when I retreat back into the world of such shows as Alice or Three's Company or Designing Women or Murphy Brown or any of the TV shows that I enjoy, I remember the 80s, I remember the 90s, I remember 1978 when I was 2 and my mother would sing me I Will Survive, and she'd go, "You think I'd crumble?" And I would crack up laughing because I was 2. and I thought crumble was really funny. So I do that. I ingest the media of the days of old. I ingest the media of times before I was so incredibly stressed, whatever that means for you in your particular age group. Okay, if there were songs that you used to play in the 5th grade that you haven't played since then, if there are TV shows that you used to watch back when you were like 12 and sitting in your bedroom, well, those might be the ones to put on, because you will experience this level of the good old days, as it were, and you will be able to retreat back into a time when things weren't so complicated. And you have that moment of respite from the stress, and respite, by the way, begins with R as well. And you can not experience stress for just a couple of minutes, a couple of hours, whatever, depending on the situation. The retreat, I suggest, is to be reserved for a time when you absolutely are at your wit's end, and if you were to continue another step, you would probably break down. Okay, wouldn't you put your car in the garage if your car were not working properly? Wouldn't you bring your car into Nissan or Volkswagen or Honda or whatever and say, hey, fix my car? Well, they'd put it up on the stand and see what's wrong with it. Well, sometimes you have to put yourself up on the stand. Sometimes you cannot continue driving down the street. You have to stop. And that is the retreat that I speak of. Retreat into whatever it is that makes you happy. Retreat into something meaningless, something, I suggest, media specific, and something that does not in any way, shape, or form resemble what it is you're stressed about. And when you have experienced this retreat, when you have gone back in time to a moment when you did not experience what you're currently experiencing that's so terrible, then you will find yourself armed and ready to take on your stressor. And that leads us to the second R. Ladies and gentlemen, review. Okay, now to review what is stressing you, I'm talking about taking a full account of what it is that's happening that is stressing you out. It may require you to make a list of pros and cons. It may require you to sit down and play the if-then game. If this worst case scenario happens, then what will I do about it? If this person says this to me, then what will my reaction be? If I cannot pay this bill, if I do not get into this college, if I do not get the grade I want, or the amount of money in the bank that I need, or whatever, then what is my action plan? And this is part of your review. You take stock, full stock of the situation, and you hold nothing back, and you think about it. You write it down if you want. You put notes in your phone. You check it online. Whatever it is that it is stressing you out, Google the information. Make the appropriate phone calls. Attack the thing that is getting you down. Attack your stressor with a full review of the details. What it is the situation is calling for. What steps you need to do in this situation. What you might possibly have to do if the worst case scenario comes out. And how possibly you will feel if the situation doesn't alleviate itself. If your stressor comes true, if the worst case scenario actually happens to you, then you should review what it is you will feel and what action you will take based on those feelings. What plan A, B, or C you intend to do if your stressor proves to be more than a bargain for. And I guarantee you that when you worst case scenario that, when you try to figure out what the worst possible outcome will be and get armed for what you'll do in that event, and the worst case scenario doesn't happen, then you'll find that review has not been for naught, because you are strong enough to handle whatever it is that comes your way. And that's the second R. Now, when you have completed these two specific things, you've done your review and you've done your retreat, it is time for the third and final R. And that is what I like to call repair. Okay, so in this particular R, you're going to do something very similar to what I said in retreat, except that you're going to do it in a different manner. To repair is to take a step backward. After the situation has occurred, after your stressor has happened, and you experience all of the negative feelings, and you have the confrontation with your boss or your teacher or your husband or whatever it is that's gone down that has caused you undue stress, then you have to repair yourself. Because here's the thing, folks, stress is not isolated. Stress is coming back. If something happened to you bad on Tuesday, guaranteed Wednesday is going to bring a new worst case scenario. Okay, that's life. So in order for you to properly process the new stressor, you must first repair yourself from the old stressor. When you were a kid, did you get in trouble for opening like a thing of milk or juice or soda or something in the refrigerator when there was this much left of the old one? And your mom said, why don't you finish the Coke or the milk or the OJ or whatever before you open a new carton? Well, you wouldn't want to tackle a new carton of stress before you've eliminated what's in the old carton. Okay, so what you want to do is take a moment, take a couple of steps back, sit in your bedroom, sit on your couch, sit in your bathroom and cry in the shower, whatever it is that you need to do to repair yourself from the damage that has been caused by your particular stressor. Okay, did you get a grade on the SAT that was less than what you imagined? Did your boss tell you there's going to be disciplinary action? Did you not meet the appropriate quota to get into a specific club or organization? Is your mother-in-law breathing down your neck? Is your father telling you that he's going to sell the house? And I'm thinking of like scenarios that would be bad for all age groups. And if this happened, then you have to take a moment and sort of get back to basics and recover from such a thing. I called it repair, but it's actually really recover, because if you don't take that moment to recover from what happened to you on a Monday, then Tuesday's going to come, bring you more horrible stuff, and you're not going to be prepared, and you're not going to be able to do the 3 R's because you're still going to be backtracked up in review. Okay, so this is my action plan, and whatever it looks like for you, do that. Okay, for me personally, I'll tell you what it looks like. When I'm in retreat stage, you'll find me sitting on my couch watching shows that came out when I was like 3 years old. Okay, back in the days when no stressors were happening, back in the happy time, back in like 1980 when I had nothing to worry about. Okay, and I take that moment, that vacation from my mind, that vacation from my problems, and I retreat back into simpler times. Then when I review and I go hard. I go into detail in the situation. I get out the phone and start Googling what's important. I get out my pen and I make a list. I call the appropriate offices. I go into the office and have the confrontation with the person who's getting me down. I do the stuff. I do the work towards relieving the situation of stress. Okay? So when I'm in either the state of review or retreat, I am doing something active to help the situation. I'm either helping my brain handle it later, or I'm in the thick of it handling it. Do you see what I mean? I'm either taking a step forward to go forth and figure out what's stressing me out and handle the details of the phenomenon, or I'm morphing myself backward to try to gear up to get ready to do that review. Okay? And then when I'm done with those two things and I go into repair mode looks like retreat mode, because repair mode is often a reward, which is another R, because that reward for a job well done, for a good review of my stressor, is when I sit back and I fortify myself for the next day. I sit down and I watch my show again, and I eat the food that I want, and I drink the beverage I want. I just do a little self-care. I just do a little time for Linda so that I am fortified to go forth the next day and meet the next stressing challenge. Does that make any sense? So with these 3 R's in place, one could actually begin to eliminate not the stressor, but some of the feelings of stress. Because now what do you have? You have an action plan. You have a way to figure out your way to navigate yourself and your mind through the minefield that is the stress of life. You have to know, as Kenny Rogers in The Gambler said, when to hold them and when to fold them. Okay, so when you are holding them is when you are in the thick of the thing, when you're in review mode, when you're going forth and tackling the situation. And when you are folding them, as Kenny Rogers said, then you are taking that moment and step back. But the thing is, it's up to you to know when time is right to do those two things, you know? Like if you're having a banking snafu, for example, the time to hold them, you know, is not going to be the time to at 3:30 on a Sunday morning, because everyone's asleep now and the bank is closed, you know. And so that's the time when you have to retreat, because if you're stressed out by something that can't be handled right now, then the best you could do is do your retreat activity, because you can't solve the problem right now. It's 3 a.m, okay? And when people are knocking on your door, or the bill collectors are calling, or your boss says, hey, I want to see you at 2 o'clock, or whatever it is, right? You can't be in retreat mode, because then you would be in denial and you'd be selling yourself out, and you would be not facing your challenges head on. Now, I know that that's easier said than done, because who doesn't want to go into retreat mode, lock the door, say it's not 2020, click, and go forth and just do what makes you happiest and eliminate stress altogether by avoiding the situation. That'd be awesome. Except here's the thing. When you don't deal with a stressful situation, when you don't engage in meaningful review, then you now have compounded your problem, because you have yesterday's problem to solve and you have today's as well. And you're not going to have time to make the proper reparations. You won't be armed for what it is that's going to ail you tomorrow. So, so in summation, what I'm suggesting to you here on our final episode of Self-Care Sundays is concrete advice for how to literally make your brain prepare for bad times, engage thoroughly in bad times when necessary, and then repair your mind from the stress of those bad times in preparation for bad times that may follow. Because as we can tell in 2020, bad times will follow. The minute you turn on the news and think that something is over, something else has begun, and the world is just one big ball of stress. That doctor on the Golden Girls who said eliminate stress if you can, he was saying a line. He was just saying what was written by Susan Harris, the writer of the sitcom. He was not suggesting anything that is meaningful or anything that can honestly be lived with in today's society. And I knew that at the age of 14. So in order to not be able to eliminate stress, I had to carve out my own way of handling it. I had to carve out my own way of not succumbing completely to the stress and winding up on the evening news on the bridge. The closest one next to me is the Verrazano. And so I had to come up with these 3 R's. I had to think about it. I had to say, Linda, what do you do? How do you manage to get up day after day with all the stressors that are compounding your life? And that's it. Those are what they are. And people will tell you different stuff, and if you like their advice, well, you go to them, okay? But what I'm saying to you as members of Linda's World is that there are specific things that a person needs to do to their mind, to their body, to their soul, so that they can go out and be armed and dangerous and ready to roll when the universe smacks them in the face. And if you don't do these things, that smack from the universe is going to hurt hard, okay? So if you engage in meaningful retreating, reviewing, and then repairing before the next event, you will be ready for anything that the world has to throw at you. And it's going to smack you in the face. And sometimes that smack might hurt. But the Band-Aid on that wound are the 3 R's. Do you see what I mean? And only by doing those 3 things at the appropriate times can a person be able to forge ahead and remember that the doctor in the Golden Girls was full of baloney, okay? You can't eliminate stress, but you can suggest and carry through with a meaningful action plan so that the stressors of the day don't get you down and you don't find yourself lost in the universe and not having a way to come out the other side. This has been the very last episode of Self-Care Sundays in Linda's World, but that does not mean that our meaningful conversations about mental health are coming to an end. Far from it. It simply means a new format. So next week, when you see new episodes appear, and I don't know if you heard, but I heard the motorcycle roaring outside my window, and that gives me stress. I am going to still continue these conversations with you, just in a different format, because I think it's really important that we discuss and discover in an open forum what it is that gets us down. First of all, the first step's admitting you have a problem, and then concrete measures to actually repair it. Because if step 1 is admitting you have a problem, what the hell is step 2? It's coming up with an actionable way, a meaningful concrete plan for you to wake up the next day and start getting it together so that you don't sucker in and sit in the corner. I don't intend to do that, because it's too much ahead of me to do that for. I'm not going to lock myself in the closet and cry. I'm going to do the 3 R's. And in fact, because it's Sunday night and I have work tomorrow, I think I'm going to do a little retreating. And I am going to watch some meaningless sitcoms, and I am going to see you later in the week with more meaningful dialogue about mental health, because even though this particular series is coming to an end, this conversation is just getting started. Thanks for sticking with it, and I'll see you later this week.